Oh, and good evening. It's December 2nd, 2025, and we're continuing our discussion collection in our Outside the Class series. Right? This series is from the Bible Project. It covers the entire TaNaK, also known as that Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament. Those source videos are available for your review. They're all on TheDustyFeet.com, and they're in that Outside the Class section. Because the intent of Outside the Class, you to listen to those in-class lectures first, those short overview videos. We expand the conversation, and we try to keep these to about 15 minutes each. Make them easy to catch up on. So we're on a quest, scroll by scroll, book by book, a journey through this collection, just maybe with a fun and different twist. Our hope with the Dusty Feet is to foster discussion and to help build and support communities. If you're not already connected to a community or just want to share and interact, this community has 4 primary ways to interact. 1. TheDustyFeet.com. That's our primary place to find everything. You are always free to comment. 2. Substack. Link is in the description below. It's designed around the written and spoken text. It's a place to connect to ourselves and others. 3. Facebook. At the Dusty Feet. These videos and other videos are also available for comment and discussion. 4. And as always, you're welcome to send an email to bob@thedustyfeet.com. These places, they will be moderated and guidelines will be set to ensure healthy, safe discussion. And as always on the Dusty Feet, this is a place where we can safely explore the endless ways of God and the interconnection of His creation. Belief understandings may be challenged, divine misunderstandings may exist, and traditional teachings might falter as we pursue connection, context, and community with God and each other here in an environment of grace and love. Oh, and before we forget, if you do find these kinds of podcasts useful to you, please, that is when you click that subscribe button. Those reminders, they just help you. But also, if you think these might be useful to others, please, that's when you click that like button, because that is how YouTube chooses to share these to more people if they wish. In this series, we're going to cover the entire TaNaK, right, the Old Testament, but we're going to do it in the order of the original Hebrew scriptures. And I also want us to remember that the videos we're going to discuss, they're just the tip of the iceberg. They are part of this learning series that I highly recommend. And of course, all of them can be available on the Bible Project's website as well. Because we'll ask many questions about all kinds of things. Answers? We'll see. So Samuel, second scroll. This is our part 3. I haven't said this in a while, and I think I should probably say this more often. And it's that sometimes when we get these overviews, the videos that you've looked at were from the Bible Project's synopsis of a scroll. And I mentioned they're just the tip of an iceberg. I really mean it. It's just a little bit. What's underneath the surface is so much more than that little synopsis that Tim and John give us on those Bible Project videos, right? They're excellent videos, and they capture what at times might say is our convenient overview of the scroll. Yet, as we've been digging into these, as you can see, sometimes the overviews don't really do justice to the depth, the messiness, the confusion, the humanness of a story. So we're back at Abner, and Abner's getting a little big for his britches. He's used one of the kings, right, Ishbaal's, he's one of his concubines. Of course, the king finds out about it. He's not happy. But then Abner goes back to him in his prominent puffiness, and he says, "The only reason you're king is that I've given you that. And now I'm going to take what you have. I'm going to give it to David. I'm going to broker a deal, and I'm going to give it all to the house of David." Actually, Abner goes so far as to say that the Lord has wanted David to be king, so I'm going to accomplish that for him. I'll be the means by which David becomes king. Ishbaal, he cowers. He has no answer. So Abner goes up to David and he says, I'll make you a deal. You make a covenant with me, and I'll give all of my support to the rest of Israel. I mean, that's politics 101. Yep. See current day stories for examples. Well, David, in the deal, right, he asks for his seventh wife back. Actually, not the seventh wife. When we're counting, she's his first wife. He wants Michal. So Abner goes back and gets her, actually takes her from her husband, who was, well, I guess thinking that David was gone, all that was happening, and that marriage, well, with David wasn't going to work, so she ended up marrying Paltiel. Well, Paltiel, he's now crying and crawling after her. He's basically chasing. Abner basically says to him, turn around, go home. I have the feeling that Abner had a way of being rather persuasive, because it's exactly what Paltiel does. Then Abner goes, and he speaks directly to the Benjamites, this tribe that David belongs to, right? The son of Jesse, a Benjamite. Now, we remember that all of David's family is with him, right? That happened long before, but we don't know the loyalty of the rest of the tribe. And Abner, well, he decides to go to them, make sure they're on board with all of them wanting to go and to agree to follow David. So Abner brokers the deal. He comes to David. He brings her. His wife tells him what he's doing, and David has a big feast for himself. This is all in the first half of chapter 3. Yeah. And then remember when we had a brother, Joab, and his brother, Asahel, right, was one of the ones that we buried him in the tomb of his father, having been killed by Abner. Well, Joab, returning from a raid, hears about the party. It's about the deal. He doesn't trust Abner. He doesn't even like Abner. And he tells David the only reason he came here was to check you out, scout you, find out everything about you, and you let him go. So Joab, he leaves David, sends his own guys out to find Abner. They do, and they bring him to Joab. Well, let's just say that the meeting between Joab and Abner, well, came to a pointed end, pun intended. And in that, David finds out he's not happy. And I think this is where sometimes responses are ones that maybe we wouldn't think about. This is just the way that's definitely David's choosing to respond. This is on his mind. Because in chapter 3, verse 26, when Joab went out from David's presence, he sent messengers after Abner, and they brought him back to the cistern of Sirah. David did not know about it. When Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside in a gateway to speak with him privately. There, he stabbed him in the stomach. So he died on the account of Asahel, Joab's brother. Afterward, when David heard of it, he said, I and my kingdom are forever guiltless before Yahweh for the blood of Abner, son of Ner. May the blood guilt fall on the head of Joab and all his father's house, and may the house of Joab never be without one who has a discharge, or who has a defiling skin disease, or who holds a spindle, or who falls by the sword, or who lacks food. So Joab and his brother Abishai murdered Abner because he had killed their brother Asahel in the battle of Gibeon. So I have another reaction, another curse from David. And yet here, David has a view of Abner that, at least on the surface, is different from one that I have for sure. I can't speak for y'all, but for me, what David thinks of Abner, the view he has of Abner, it's an interesting one to me. And the part of the action might be, maybe, because David has seen maybe a certain side of Abner, if that makes sense, right? That he hasn't seen some of the other activity that Abner's had. It can just lead us to ponder amongst ourselves. If I only knew what I thought David think he knew, should I think the same thing he is? But what I want us to remember, like we've done before with this, where we've had certain events between Saul and David that cause us to put up a box on the shelf, right? This interaction with Abner and David and Abner's behavior. Well, that can raise questions that might also need to be put in a box on a shelf, because we might later encounter echoes of those behaviors. Actually, I think we know we're going to see some. So we'll see if both of them repeat as the story goes on. But here's the response that David gives about Abner. It's in chapter 3. It starts in verse 31. Then David said to Joab and to all the people who were with him, "Tear your clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourn over Abner." And King David followed the bier. They buried Abner at Hebron. The king lifted up his voice and wept at the grave of Abner, and all the people wept. The king lamented for Abner, saying, "Should Abner die as a fool dies? Your hands were not bound, your feet were not fettered. As one falls before the wicked, you have fallen." And all the people wept over him again. Then all the people came to persuade David to eat something while it was still day. But David swore, saying, "So may God do to me and more if I taste bread or anything else before the sun goes down." All the people took notice of it, and it pleased them, just as everything the king did pleased all the people. So all the people and all Israel understood that day that the king had no part in the killing of Abner, son of Ner. And the king said to his servants, "Do you not know that a prince and a great man has fallen this day in Israel? Today I am powerless, even though anointed king. These men, the sons of Zeruiah, are too violent for me. The Lord pay them back, the one who does wickedly in accordance with his wickedness." So it seems David has an honor code, maybe a bit different from what we might think. I'm not convinced he's wrong and we're right by any means. But David also looks pretty covenant driven, and that no one can kill to usurp. We can hang on that till later. But there's more killing in the name of honor, claiming to do it either in the name of God or in the name of King David. And we see that David, he disagrees with that. He doesn't like that honor killing. Ishbaal is still the king of Israel. Just now he's fearful, having lost his military general. Maybe his pride as well, if you read the story. So two other military captains of Ishbaal, right? Rechab and Baanah. They've conspired. They went to visit Ishbaal. They kill him. Not only that, they cut off his head. They traveled all night to reach David. They wanted to present this head to him as a trophy. David's response? Well, by now it's what you would expect. David has them killed, and then, in true victor warrior fashion, again, maybe not something we would do, especially having seen it done in earlier stories, David has their hands and feet cut off. There has to be a story behind that. And then their bodies are hung beside the pool of Hebron. This is messy. That doesn't even begin to describe how we've gotten to this point. God's way it should have been. Well, that's something that I'm going to leave you all to discuss amongst yourselves about. And then maybe inside of that, a question can arise. Does the end justify the means? That's going to give us more to ponder. So next week, we're going to finally get to the coronation of King David, this messy near decade behind us, and we can move on for better or for worse. So thanks for with us tonight on another Outside the Class episode on the second scroll of Samuel on the Dusty Feet.